Hello everyone, I'm Meo.
And I'm Kido.
And this is our obligatory review of the Ahsoka series.
This is our last non-scary video for a little bit because this is the October season, and we wanted to get this out because some people have been asking for it.
To go ahead and clear the air before we get started, this is not really a positive video, because we didn't really like the series. So if you don't want to hear any negative opinions about Ahsoka, or change your mind about it, if you liked it, go ahead and check out this video over here.
And with that out of the way, let's get into it. I don't think Dave Filoni had malicious intentions when making this series, though I might be giving him a little too much credit. But the series as a whole didn't end up being a very fantastic project.
Viewer retention was already pretty low. And so we go to our first problem with the series, the bland characters. The idea of including so many characters from the Rebels and Clone Wars series isn't bad, but the execution, more often than not, is sloppy.
First character, Ahsoka. She's pretty boring, and she sucks a lot of the energy out of the series and a lot of scenes, and she's not particularly fun to really have on screen, as she's rather underacted and emotionless. She seems lifeless, but that could be part of her development, in which case that's kinda sad. I think that the actress for the young Ahsoka added a little bit more to the character, but yeah, not really a fan.
Sabine, probably the worst written character in the series. She is selfish, unlikable, and the actress for the character is not great. On the writing side, her character development is only learning to use the Force, and to a certain degree her reconciliation with Ahsoka, which we will talk about later because that has problems.
I've known many Padawans over the centuries, and I can safely say your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
Yeah, they had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie.
Balin Skoll is the most interesting and well-acted character. He has gravitas and conveys a sense of weight when on screen. That said, we don't really learn much about him, and he's rather undeveloped. They just make him say things to make him appear rather mysterious, and it seems kind of superficial.
Shin Hati is Balin's apprentice. She looks like Alice from Batwoman or something. She's pretty much a nothing character, and I find it sad that people simp for her.
Maybe because she looks like Toga? I don't know.
Oh man.
Hera is the actual worst acted character. I think this is both the fault of the actress, but primarily the writer and directors, as she is very irresponsible, like bringing her son on an unauthorized, dangerous mission, and she never really gets discipline for her actions. She also goes after this guy for no reason.
Hu Yang, I believe that's how you say his name, he's a droid. He's well voice acted, and I like the character's mannerisms. I believe it's an animatronic, so they did pretty good with that. The character doesn't really develop throughout the series because he's just the token droid character.
Morgan Elsbeth is easily the second best villain and the second best fighter. She doesn't do anything in the series until the last episode, but overall I found her to be fine. I think she has a decent presence.
Thrawn, the blue guy. He lacks presence. He never gets to show that he's actually a good strategist because he always relies on the witches and or his plans just don't end up working out. There are parts in the series where clearly he's supposed to be all big brain and everything, but I don't think the writers have enough tactical prowess to come up with actual good scenarios, so it just comes off pretty dumb or contrived.
Why?
Ezra, not particularly well acted, and seems almost too jovial in random situations. And despite him being the main motivating force for Sabine's actions, he's never really a driving force for any action taken in the series. He needs to be told to do something by either Sabine or Ahsoka. He's also the most passive character, and he never even makes a suggestion. On to the next section, writing. While the show may be well intended, it is not well written. I'm not the biggest fan of Andor, but the writing in that series overall was far superior.
Right off the bat, they don't really take a lot of time to set up any of the characters we're supposed to be following, and it's hard for an uninitiated Star Wars fan to just hop into this series and be invested because they wouldn't have any of the backstory about any of the characters.
Speaking of backstory, there's a lot of stuff that happens off screen, such as Sabine being trained by Ahsoka in the first place, and her reasonings for not being trained any longer. Apparently her family died off screen, and possibly because Ahsoka stopped her from going, but it's kinda hard to follow the way they present it in the series.
There's also a lot of repeated stuff in the series. Specifically, there's Ahsoka the White, which refers to the final episode of Rebels, where Ahsoka appears in a white garb holding a staff, because Dave Filoni's a big fan of Lord of the Rings.
In this scene, Sabine also has cut her hair so it's shorter than usual.
In this series, we catch up with Ahsoka, and she's wearing her regular gray Jedi robes, and Sabine has her hair grown out again. Later, Sabine cuts her hair when she rejoins Ahsoka, in a scene that is pretty much shot for shot the same as it was in Rebels.
And later, after Ahsoka goes through some weird lesson thing with Anakin, she dresses in white again.
Just a lot of retcons and unnecessary repeats of themes.
Also, when Sabine cuts her hair, it's always before they leave to go find Ezra. There's also a lot of plot holes, about the same as usual, but I think there's more plot armor and plot conveniences in this series than usual.
On to our next point, action scenes.
Action scenes are a bit of a mixed bag. Most of the lightsaber fights in the first half are subpar. They get slightly better later. Fight between Ahsoka and Balin, and the last one between Ahsoka and Morgan are easily the two best executed.
Hayden Christensen returns as Anakin Skywalker. Star Wars fans cheer now. And he does the best job at the lightsaber choreography. In the scenes where he's fighting with Ahsoka, it's clear to see that he still has what it takes to wield that lightsaber. And it really makes Rosario Dawson, who's playing Ahsoka, look really slow and clunky. And as we said, the second best fighter is definitely Morgan Elsbeth. A lot of flourishes, but other than that, I think it's pretty cool. Her movements do a lot of the carrying with the fights between her and Ahsoka. And Balin, it seems like his attacks carry actual weight behind those swings, but he leaves himself open all the time. Like right here, he should be dead.
As you mentioned earlier, Ahsoka looks like she's wielding clubs. And the problem with the fight sequences is the fact that they don't really mean anything. They very rarely carry any kind of story weight to them. It's like, yes, here's a fight, because there's very little emotional investment in any of these duels. Plus also the plot armor is very thick in this series.
To the point when someone can get stabbed and not die. There's also a lot of perilous situations, such as following a transport that's firing a cannon at you, approaching a big spaceship that's shooting a cannon at you, running towards a base that has a cannon shooting at you, or driving through a minefield. But with that over, on to our next section, nostalgia.
There's a lot of nostalgia bait in this one, and Memberberries. They throw Anakin in a bunch of scenes just to get people's attention. I believe he appears in at least 3 different episodes, including at the very end.
There's a bunch of character things to reference Rebels, such as the fact that Ahsoka crosses her arms when she stands, just like she does in the cartoon. Plenty of references to the animated shows and The Mandalorian as well.
Lucasfilm has been doing this for a while, trying to hide their terrible movies and shows behind a veil of memories from a better time, and I'm kind of tired of it. But at least the Star Wars fans still seem to like it.
Now we're going to talk about the finale specifically, and some issues that pop up in the final episode.
The episode before this one is not very good either, but maybe we'll just show a couple of clips just to kind of get that point across.
No. The Force is my ally. That's all I need.
Take her, now.
Right off with the finale, Thrawn's ship is fully loaded with all the cargo they were loading, so this episode should basically be over. They should just take off and dock in space with the ring. Instead, they decide to dock on the planet to give Ahsoka and the rest of the crew time to try to get on board.
As we mentioned earlier, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra are blasted to bits by the cannons.
And this is the episode that introduces zombie stormtroopers.
It's very, very, very dumb, and also rather inconsistent, or at least very hard to figure out what's going on. The zombies sometimes move around like, oh, we've been struggling around like zombies and stuff like that. But other times they don't for some reason. I think it's because there wasn't enough direction going into these scenes.
Even the scenes when they're shambling forward, some of them just seem to be walking normally.
Maybe it has something to do with their injuries, but other times I look back at scenes like, wait a second, I thought you were cut down. Why aren't you stumbling around? They take off one zombie trooper's head, but never again.
They kill a bunch of stormtroopers and then they get up, but then later they run into 2 that are already dead?
Plus there's this whole cliche of like, oh, green glowing eyes and stumbling around. It's just really dumb. Moving on, Morgan is tasked by Thrawn to go slow down the Jedi because the zombie troopers didn't work out because he planned that really poorly because he could have like shut them in and maybe like trapped them with the zombie troopers, but we're getting off subject. Anyway, she's tasked with stopping them, but she only ends up stopping Ahsoka and leaves the door open behind her so that Ezra and Sabine can continue on.
This is the worst fight scene in Ahsoka, and possibly the worst scene in the show in general.
Okay, so for some reason these 2 troopers are behind pillars waiting for them, though it's not even a sneak attack. Okay, so Sabine doesn't deactivate her lightsaber here during the roll, which is kind of dangerous, but then deactivates it afterwards, so I don't know what that's about.
Ezra does a little spin before going into the attack, and that left his back exposed, but luckily he wasn't shot.
So he stabs his opponent, and then just stares at him. You think if he moves his lightsaber any direction, he'll cause more damage to his opponent, possibly even killing his opponent, but instead he just looks his opponent deeply in the eyes and says, you know what? This is fine.
He gets a crap smacked out of him.
Loses his lightsaber, of course. Okay, so Sabine's shooting this guy. And then the guy drops his gun for some reason, and Sabine's running around this pillar. I'm not quite sure what to do. Also, at this point, she could use missiles or her flamethrower.
Somehow this guy's teleported right next to the pillar, and she runs right into his arm. And her helmet is not on very well.
The guy then does the most logical move and points the gun directly at his face, not past him or anything, even though he's stronger than Sabine, as we clearly see.
I don't know what happened here. Either it wasn't clipped on very well and it fell off, in which case you gotta ask why didn't it fall off when she got smacked earlier. And if she was reaching for it to try to activate it, we didn't see that, so I guess I don't know.
That whole exchange was kind of weird. Ezra's just been rolling all across the floor at this point, but as we see here, he will try something a little different. First he gets thrown. He does this weird tappy tap thing, and then he kicks the guy in the back.
However, he's not using the Force.
This would be a good time to use the Force, but instead he tries to throw a punch and then gets immediately punched back. Sabine's really struggling here.
So she's gonna try to reach for the Force.
Even though she probably is losing oxygen.
Somehow something clicked, I guess.
Ezra's really losing and still not using the Force. She shoots the one guy and he doesn't even really stop at all. That gives Ezra enough time to go get his lightsaber. Then he
saw how quick that was.
Yeah, you could have done that at any point in this fight. But instead he was content just trying to fight with his hands. Then he twirls around and cuts off the guy's head and it's that easy. This is just a bad scene.
So many questions. I don't know who arranged this, but whoever it is shouldn't have. So, Sabine just got her Force powers working, and she's telling Ezra to jump the gap, and she'll Force push him. I would have no confidence in this, and it would make more sense if Ezra was the one to Force push her and encourage her. But God forbid should Ezra actually do anything meaningful in this series.
I think that narratively that would have made a lot more sense. Ahsoka has a rematch with Morgan, but the scene doesn't really matter because Sabine and Ezra already got past. Instead of joining Ezra, Sabine stays to help Ahsoka with her newfound superpowers and a lot of choreography that looks rather bad. And Ahsoka ends up killing Morgan with 2 slashes, even though Sabine was stabbed and survived.
In the end, Thrawn escapes with Ezra hidden aboard, leaving Balin, Shin, Ahsoka, and Sabine stranded on that planet. Overall, this is a bad trade, at least for the good guys. Later, Ahsoka says some kind of bullcrap about how, oh, we're all where we need to be, because she saw an owl, which represents like the light side of the Force or something, and she's like, oh, Ezra's where he needs to be, and it's fine that we were trapped here and Thrawn got back, which is what we were trying not to do.
I think this is just probably a bait for season 2. Also, Ezra, after escaping on Thrawn's ship, somehow manages to escape Thrawn's ship. I don't know why he wasn't, like, blown to bits. But anyway, he arrives on a New Republic ship, and then this scene is just so bad. They all just stand there waiting for him to get off the ship with their guns pointed at him, but no one says anything, and some of them aren't even pointing their guns at him.
What the dog doing?
And he doesn't say anything either, and so he just walks out like, oh, and just holds up his hands. Chopper recognizes him, and then and only then does he take off his helmet.
This is ridiculous. Also, didn't he call ahead and say, hey, I'm Ezra. Hey guys, I'm coming back, don't shoot.
But for some reason, there's an enemy ship on board.
Thank goodness it wasn't some kind of bomber craft.
Or like just a ship with guns that could blow through everyone. Either way, a really stupid scene.
Like we said before, the series ends with a cherry on top, as Anakin Skywalker returns for one last cameo.
Yay. Anyway, series, not that great. Definitely not a masterpiece that people are making it out to be.
I'm really not sure why people like it so much, other than the fact that they're blinded by nostalgia and seeing lightsabers flash every few minutes.
I think that the retention for as far as audience goes is pretty low, so I'm assuming only people who wanted to watch the series will watch it, like the really die-hard Star Wars fans. I'm sure they have some kind of enjoyment out of this, especially in episodes 4 and 5.
4 is definitely the peak of the series for me.
5 just has Memberberries, and I didn't really appreciate it, but maybe that's just because I'm just dead inside.
Not to say there's anything wrong with liking the series, because if you're a huge Star Wars fan and you really like Rebels and Clone Wars, I can see a lot of satisfaction in seeing those characters finally put in live action. But you have to admit the storytelling is pretty weak.
The finale, though, I think is unforgivably bad. I don't know how anyone could defend this, it's just bad writing. But that's just our quick opinions on the series.
Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
And if you're interested in watching another video, watch this one over here. But until then, he's Meo.
And he's Kido.
And we hope you have a blessed day.
Bye!